Okay, so we can, excuse me. Okay, so we can get started. Others may join as we go in. For our attendees, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box and we will refer to them as we go. Jennifer, if you want to, do you prefer to get through the presentation and then questions, or take questions as you go?
I'll stop about halfway through and we can
Okay,
take any questions, and then again at the end.
All right, great. So, welcome to University Express, everyone. I'm Kitty. I am with the Erie County Department of Senior Services. I've been with the department for a couple of years, and I've recently joined Katie Earl and the University Express team. So I'm happy to be here. I just have a few announcements about senior services, because most people don't understand everything that we offer here. And it's immense. So I'm just going to mention a few of those services that we offer. So we have our Stay Fit dining program at 48 sites where you can get a meal and nutritional counseling. We also have Choose Healthy Western New York workshops where you can learn how to better manage the challenges of chronic disease. And maybe chronic disease doesn't affect you, but someone you know may be in need of some information. We have the Benefits Enrollment Center. You could call Erie County New York Connects, and they will assist you with any questions you have about eligibility for benefits, as well as help you with the paperwork, which is what I like, because that can be time consuming and frustrating as well. But we got somebody here to help you. And then we have RSVP, which is the department I came from, Retired Senior Volunteer Program. This is a program where we give guidance to those who want to serve in their community as a volunteer. So we would connect you with local not-for-profit groups who are looking for volunteers. There are special benefits for being an RSVP volunteer. And by the way, that stands for Retired or Senior Volunteer Program. Now, a word from our sponsors. So we would not be able to do this program without our sponsors, especially Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, Wegmans, and us, the Erie County Department of Senior Services. I'll introduce you to our to our speaker today, Jennifer Johnson. She has done University Express classes for us in the past, and we're happy to have her here today. So Jennifer Johnson has been the Health Promotion Coordinator for Government Programs at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York since 2009. For over 20 years, she has worked with older adults and Medicare Advantage Plus. She is a Western New York native and a graduate of Canisius College. Jennifer is a certified wellness coach and a certified nutrition and wellness consultant, specializing in fitness and wellness for older adults. She's also a registered yoga teacher and a certified personal trainer. Jennifer lives in Hamburg with her husband and son, and she is a ferocious reader and enjoys running, and of course, yoga and cooking. So I'll toss it to you, Jennifer. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being with me today. So this is a fun program for me to teach today. As Kitty said, I'm a registered yoga teacher. Most of you know me from my work at what is now Highmark, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, where I've been since 2009. But I've been practicing yoga for, oh dear, probably 6 or 7 years, consistently, and finally decided to bite the bullet and do the yoga teacher training last winter, so just a little over a year ago. So I've been a registered yoga teacher for about a year, and it is a very intense program. It requires a minimum of 200 hours of study and workshops and training. I did 300 hours, and let me tell you, 300 hours is a lot. So I am what's called an RYT, a registered yoga teacher. And if you research, if you're looking for a yoga teacher, you'll see some yoga teachers have, registered yoga teachers have RYT after their name, and then some have RYT 200, some have RYT 500, meaning they've completed at least 500 hours of training. So there's a lot of different classifications out there. But I've been practicing yoga for several years now, and it really just has such amazing benefits for us physically, mentally, emotionally. And so that's what we'll talk about today, is what are some of these great benefits that yoga brings to us. We'll practice a little bit of yoga together, which you can certainly participate in, or else just watch me demonstrate if you'd like. And then at the end, we'll get into some just some details. If yoga is something that you're considering trying, maybe for the first time, we'll talk about some background information that would be helpful for you to know. All right. So I'd like to start out with what yoga is, and then on the next slide, we'll talk about what yoga is not, because I think, especially if you've never practiced yoga before, people have a lot of thoughts about yoga that might not always be completely accurate. So yoga is a practice that originated in ancient India, and yoga involves movement, meditation, and breath work. So you need all three of those things to be practicing yoga. In the West, so yoga originated in the East, but in the West, the most common type of yoga that's practiced is called Hatha Yoga. And when you see, I've got some words here kind of in italics. The language of yoga is Sanskrit, and so Hatha is a Sanskrit word. The most common type of yoga is Hatha, and Hatha links movement and breath. So as you move through various poses, an instructor will cue you or tell you when to inhale and when to exhale. So it links, you're doing movement and breath work at the same time. The meditation component in Hatha Yoga is usually done at the beginning and the end of class. So rather than focusing on trying to link movement and breath work and meditation all together, Hatha focuses on linking movement and breath, and then meditation is done separately. The goal of yoga is probably not what you think it is. The goal of yoga is not flexibility. It's not building strength. It's not to raise our heart rate and get exercise. The goal of yoga is to calm the mind. So the goal of yoga is to slow that constant jumping around of our minds and how we jump from thought to thought. The goal of yoga is really more what we think of when we think of meditation. So the goal of yoga is to calm the mind, to turn inward and kind of shut out the distractions of the world around us and the distractions of our own minds. The word yoga, which again is a Sanskrit word, the word yoga translates to yoke. So a yoke is a wooden beam that is used to hook animals like oxen together to pull a cart or to pull a plow. So yoke as a verb means to bind together. So to bring more than one thing together. So in yoga, what we're trying to bring together is the mind, the body, and the spirit, all together in alignment, all together in the same place at the same time. So that's the goal of yoga, is to come together, to bring all of those things together and to calm us, to calm our minds and our spirits. What yoga is not, and I think this is maybe more important than what yoga is. Yoga is not, first and foremost, a religion. There are certainly some religious components to various types of yoga. Yoga has ties to Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, but it is not a religion in itself. Yoga encourages spirituality. But when we say spirituality, we don't mean religion. We mean spirituality as in connecting to some higher level of consciousness. And that might be very different for very different people. For some people that might be, your God, whatever that means for you. But for other people, that might just be connecting to a higher consciousness of themselves, feeling more in tune with one's own spirit. Not necessarily not necessarily spirituality in a religious sense. You can be any religion and still practice yoga. This is a question that I hear a lot and that I see debated a lot on yoga websites and blogs. You can be any religion and practice yoga. Yoga does not interfere with any type of religious practice. For people who practice yoga very intensely, or for people who intend to live a more yogic way of life, yoga does teach a sort of a moral code. It's called the eight-limbed path, and the eight-limbed path of yoga teaches various rules for living and for interacting with oneself and with other people. Most of those rules are very similar to what is taught by most major religions. Things like nonviolence, things like not stealing, things like practicing moderation, and lots of other rules that dovetail with most major religions, as well as most of the laws and social norms that we already follow on a daily basis. So the teachings of yoga, even under a very intense practice, don't conflict with the teachings of other major religions. Yoga is not about chanting. So you will find, depending on what type of yoga class you might take, or more specifically, what instructors you might encounter. Some yoga instructors like chanting a little bit more than other yoga instructors do. For me, chanting is not something I'm particularly into. If you happen to take a yoga class where the instructor does a lot of chanting, it's okay for you to participate. It's also okay for you just to listen. If it's something that you're not comfortable with, or you can't quite grasp exactly what the Sanskrit words are that are being used, it's okay to participate, and it's also okay just to observe quietly. Again, chanting is not something that, while it may be religious in nature for the instructor, it does not have to be religious in nature for you. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable in any way, it is something that you can simply observe. And enjoy the same way you might enjoy hearing someone sing a spiritual hymn that isn't necessarily reflective of your own religion. Yoga is not just stretching or just another exercise class. This is something that really, can provoke some confusion in people. The key to yoga is really that interaction of the movement and the breath work. And without those things together, if you're moving, for example, maybe you're taking an aerobics class, you're moving, but without that focus on the inhale and the exhale and the breathing pattern, and noticing your breath and focusing on your breath, then that's not yoga. That's simply movement or simply exercise. And while some yoga poses do incorporate a great deal of stretching, stretching isn't the only thing that yoga is about. There's other movements that don't involve stretching at all. Yoga is not just for flexible people. Again, something else I hear a lot, oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible. You don't need to be flexible. Yoga will make you flexible. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I would venture to say that the less flexible you are, the more you need yoga. Yoga will help you to improve your flexibility. You don't need to be, you don't need to be a double jointed, or you don't need to be a flexible person to start. And yoga is for everyone. So I have a book here that when I show it to you, you'll probably see it backwards. I think that's just how the camera works. But this book is called Yoga for Everyone. And this is one of the texts that I used during my yoga teacher training. It's by a yoga instructor named Diane Bondi, and I'll put the information in the chat for you. But this book, if you think that you cannot do yoga, that there's something about your body that prevents you from doing yoga, I beg you, even if you don't buy this book, go to the library and look at it, or pick it up in a bookstore and look at it. There are people in this book. This book shows you pregnant women doing yoga. This book shows you a gentleman who is in a wheelchair doing yoga. Yoga is for everyone. And this book, I love this book because it really shows you some of the different adaptations that can be done to really make yoga accessible for everyone. So I'm going to take, just before we go on here, I'm going to take just a minute, and in the chat, I'm going to add Yoga for Everyone by Diane Bondi. Okay. So if you've never taken a yoga class before, or even if you have, this is a little bit of what a Hatha yoga class, the outline that a Hatha style yoga class would follow. First of all, you arrive. Okay, so you come into the yoga studio. It's generally a good idea to arrive at a yoga class kind of quietly. When people arrive at yoga, they, you roll out your mat or sit in your chair if it's a chair-based yoga class, and people kind of start that process of trying to turn inward and beginning to focus their thoughts and their breathing. So you can certainly chat, with neighbors, but it isn't a place to be loud. It's a place to use not only an indoor voice, but also a quieter version of your indoor voice. So as you arrive, you settle into whatever your seat is, your mat, your chair, and you just kind of sit quietly and begin to focus on your breathing a little bit, feeling yourself inhaling and exhaling. When the class starts, the instructor will start with a period called centering. And centering is one of the parts of the practice that are meditative, that fall into that meditation category. So in centering, the instructor will invite you to bring your attention to your body or to your breath. Probably will invite you to close your eyes if that's something you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, it's okay to soften your gaze. So rather than staring at the instructor, waiting to see what he or she will do next, you can kind of lower your gaze and maybe gaze down at your cheeks, or gaze down at your hands in your lap, And you'll spend the first few minutes of class maybe breathing together a little bit, focusing on that feeling of inhaling and exhaling, working to make your breathing a little bit slower, encouraging your heart rate to slow down a little bit. You know, if you were rushing to get to class, your heart might be still pounding a little bit. So centering is a time to begin that process of turning inward. This also is a time where the instructor might invite you to focus on something particular for the day, maybe a body part. So the instructor might say something like, you know, today we're going to focus on opening up the hips. So, you know, as we sit, take these moments to relax or release any tension that you might have in the area of your hips, something like that. Or might invite you to focus on a particular feeling or emotion in your practice today. You know, today we're going to focus on gratitude, or today we're going to focus on, you know, calming the mind. Today we're going to focus on joy. So something like that. The instructor might work to incorporate a little bit of a theme into the practice for the day. Then next you'll move into a warm-up, which is exactly what it sounds like, just as you would do in any other type of exercise class. You'll do some smaller movements that help to warm up the larger muscles and to warm up some of the joints. In yoga in particular, we really want to get the fluid surrounding the joints warmed up. The synovial fluid. So we want to kind of get things loosened up and moving a little bit. So you'll spend 5 to 10 minutes in this warm-up phase. You'll frequently find that the warm-up will mimic some of the poses you might do later in the class. So if you're going to spend a lot of time focusing on your hips, you'll probably spend a little bit of time in the warm-up phase loosening up the hip joints and warming up the muscles that warming up the glutes and the thigh muscles. And then the body of class. So this is where your instructor will go through a series of poses. Sometimes that's called a flow, where one pose flows into another. That will take up the bulk of your class time. Then you'll move into a cool down, which of course is the opposite of a warm up. You'll work to stretch some of those areas that you used during class and help to get those muscles to start settling down. Then the next portion of the class is that meditation period or rest. This is sometimes referred to, if your instructor uses a lot of Sanskrit, this period is generally referred to as Shavasana. Shavasana is a pose. It's an actual pose where you lie down. You lay on your back and your arms and legs are stretched out and you rest. Okay, it's a resting pose. And many people say that Shavasana is the hardest pose because while your body is reclined and resting, the goal is to meditate, to turn inward, to calm the mind, to focus on the breathing. And for a lot of people, myself included, that's extremely difficult. It's something that people work for years to improve at. So the end of class is that meditation period. And then at the very end, you leave, right? You depart. It's departure time. And again, just like arriving, this is something you want to do a little quietly. Some people like to spend more time in meditation than others. So some people will stay in that pose after class is over. So it's polite to gather up your things and leave quietly. Again, you can certainly chat in quiet voices, but nothing too loud. Saying goodbye to your instructor. Usually yoga studios have a little separate lobby area where you can chat with your classmates or with the instructor, while those who want to spend a little bit longer in meditation can stay within the actual classroom. And so that allows you to have a little bit more conversation than you might within the actual classroom setting. So if you've never taken a yoga class before, this is very much like what you can expect. And we'll go through most of these portions, most of these class portions in a little bit. So what are some of the health benefits of yoga? Yoga has benefits for everyone. So no matter how frequently or infrequently you practice, no matter how gentle or athletic your practice might be, there are benefits for everyone who practices yoga. Different types of classes have different benefits. So Hatha is a style of yoga that is what is generally practiced here in the US and in the West as a whole. But underneath that Hatha umbrella, there are many different types of classes. So a very vigorous practice. A word for that would be Vinyasa. So Kitty, I see that you just asked, can you spell that for us? Hatha is Hatha, and I'll just go back a couple of slides here. So right here, I'm circling it with my cursor as though you can see what I'm doing. Hatha in the second bullet here, Hatha. That's the style that is most commonly practiced. But a very vigorous type of Hatha practice might be, you might see it in a class description as Vinyasa, and I'm going to put that in the chat. Vinyasa. That involves a great deal of movement. There's not a lot of resting in between poses. So that has some specific types of benefits, maybe some more cardiovascular kinds of benefits. Maybe you're going to sweat a little bit more in a Vinyasa type of class. Then alternatively, you might take a restorative kind of yoga class, okay, which is not a Sanskrit word, just the English word, restorative. A restorative class is going to be very slow paced. You're going to hold a relaxed position for maybe 10 minutes and simply breathe while you're reclining in a relaxed position. Well, that has its own benefits. Maybe not aerobic or cardiovascular, but it has its own flexibility and calming sort of benefits. So different types of classes have different types of benefits. Not all classes are right for all people. If you've never practiced yoga before, I wouldn't encourage you to try a Vinyasa class. I'd encourage you to work up to that. So another really common type of class are hot yoga classes, which are exactly up in very warmly heated rooms, heated to over 100 degrees. That's not for me. That isn't going to be a good kind of yoga for me. I don't like that kind of atmosphere. And if you have heart problems or if you're a pregnant woman, hot yoga is not going to be right for you. So not all classes are right for everybody. Sometimes it can take a little bit of trial and error. And just like any other type of movement or physical activity, I do encourage you to talk to your doctor before beginning yoga, particularly if you've had a joint replacement, if you have osteoporosis, if you have a back or neck injury. Yoga is for everyone, and everyone can do some type of yoga safely. However, there may be certain movements that your doctor does not want you to perform. So I'll give you just one example. If you have osteoporosis, your doctor will not want you to bend over and try to touch your toes with straight legs. Okay? Can you still practice yoga? Absolutely. Just when you bend over to try to touch your toes, you need to bend your knees. That's all. So it's just about knowing what are the modifications that I might have to make in order to safely practice yoga. And a good yoga instructor will be able to help you with those modifications, but I still encourage you to talk to your doctor first, because remember that your yoga instructor is not a doctor, right? We learn a lot of anatomy and a lot about different physical conditions during those 200 or 300 or 500 hours of practice that we do, but we didn't go to medical school. So it is important to check with your doctor and make sure that you know what sort of movements are safe for you to do. All right. So let's start with flexibility. So remember, you don't need to be flexible to do yoga. Yoga will improve your flexibility. How does it do that? Why does it do that? So yoga improves flexibility because poses are held for a length of time. Depending on the class, that length of time might be 30 seconds or it might be 10 minutes. But either way, you're not just jumping from movement to movement. When we hold a pose for a length of time, the muscles are able to go deeper into that stretch. When we hold positions, that also allows the joints, the tendons, and the fascia to reap the benefits of the stretch. The fascia is this layer underneath our skin. It kind of acts as I like to think of it as a wetsuit. Okay, so it's this layer underneath our skin that holds our bodies together. Okay, so it's what holds our muscles and our organs and our tendons and our ligaments. It holds everything in place. That fascia, just like muscles and joints, can become tight. It can become uncomfortable. And so those held poses allow all of our different body parts to expand and to increase range of motion. Over time, yoga increases our range of motion, so our ability to move through the full range of our joints, right? So if I've got my arm here, right, the longer I practice yoga, the more my shoulder is able to move within its full capacity, okay? Over time, yoga also improves posture, which I don't really encounter a lot of people who think about, oh, I'd like to improve my posture. But posture actually is really important for our health. It isn't just about, standing tall and looking nice. It's not just about being able to balance a book on your head, but it's about reducing our risk for back pain. Okay, if you have poor posture and you hunch, that puts a lot of pressure on your lower back. It puts a lot of pressure on your shoulders. It puts a lot of pressure on your chest. So it makes it harder. When we have poor posture, it's harder for us to take a full deep breath and bring that oxygen all the way down to our diaphragm. So good posture helps us to, it helps us to breathe more deeply. It helps us to support our back, our neck, our shoulders, our hips. So good posture is incredibly important. And yoga also helps to reduce the risk of injury. So when our muscles, our joints, our tendons, when they can move to their fullest capacity, we're better able to avoid injury, okay? We're less likely to get hurt because our body is accustomed to moving through its full potential range of motion. Yoga improves balance. This is so important. So a topic that I discuss frequently, I think we've done it for University Express, is preventing falls. Yoga improves balance. Yoga builds strength, especially in our core and in our leg muscles. So let me start with the legs. The muscles in the front of our legs, the quads, the muscles in the backs of our legs, the hamstrings, and the muscles in our glutes, okay, in your rear end. Those are the biggest muscles in our body. When those muscles are strong, we have a good, solid base of support, okay? Our core, your core is the muscles in your abdomen, your lower back, your hips, your pelvis, okay? When our core is strong, the core muscles are the muscles that provide stability. And I always encourage people to try this little exercise. You don't have to do it right now, but later today, when you're standing at your kitchen counter, okay? Do this at your kitchen counter because it's something you can hold on to if you need to. Standing at your kitchen counter, balance on one foot. Just lift one foot up. The counter's there if you need to grab onto it. But while you're standing on one foot, notice, pay attention to your body. Notice, where are you shaky? What muscles are working? Well, most people, if I just ask you that question, most people say, well, the muscles in the leg you're standing on. It's the standing leg. No, it isn't. It's the muscles in your belly, your abdomen, on your sides, your obliques. Those are the muscles that are working to balance you as you stand on one foot. Your core, those core muscles, those are what give us stability. Those are the muscles that try to right us when we're off balance. So having a strong core helps to improve our balance. And the bottom line, good balance prevents falls. End of story. When your balance is good, you are so much less likely to fall. Now, are there other ways besides yoga to improve your balance? Of course. But this is one of the benefits of yoga, is that improved balance. Yoga improves heart health. Now, again, I talked about Vinyasa yoga and how that's a little bit more cardiovascular. You might sweat a little bit, right? A little bit more with Vinyasa yoga. But any type of yoga improves heart health. Even restorative yoga, where you're reclining in relaxed positions, it still improves heart health because yoga lowers our blood pressure and slows the heart rate. And what that does is it helps to reduce our stress levels. When we are stressed, or when we encounter a stressful situation, the system that goes into action is called our sympathetic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is the one that activates that fight or flight response, right? Most people have heard that before. So that idea that you're in a stressful or potentially dangerous situation, we either have to fight, right? Maybe you're being chased by a bear, okay? Probably not, but your body thinks you're being chased by a bear. The sympathetic nervous system, its job is to help you fight off the bear or run away as quickly as possible. So fight or flight is the job of the sympathetic nervous system. Yoga activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the opposite of fight or flight. This is what we call rest and digest, okay? So it's the opposite. When our parasympathetic nervous system is activated, our body is calm. Our body is relaxed, okay? We're not in that state of heightened awareness and reactivity. The parasympathetic nervous system helps to lower blood pressure, reduces inflammation. So that reduced inflammation is probably why many studies have shown that yoga even lowers cholesterol levels and triglyceride levels. Okay? That is likely due to that activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps to lower inflammation. So you don't necessarily have to be sweating and breathing fast in order to be improving your heart health. Yoga improves self-image. This is so important. I apologize for looking away. I've got my notes over here. Yoga encourages us to notice how our bodies feel rather than how they look. When I first started practicing yoga, I was very confused because most yoga studios don't have mirrors. When I was a kid, I danced for a really long time. And of course, dance studios all have mirrors, right? And then when you go to the gym, there's mirrors all over the place. Yoga studios typically don't have mirrors. And the reason for that is it doesn't matter how your pose looks. What matters is how it feels. Does it feel right? Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel like, do you feel in your body the same thing that the instructor is describing? Okay. If you're doing a pose wrong in a way that you could hurt yourself, the instructor will come over to you and will help you to adjust. But otherwise, it doesn't matter what the pose looks like. It matters how it feels to you. And once you shift to that mindset, you never go back. It really is amazing. This idea that it doesn't matter what I look like. It's a really incredible feeling. In this same way, yoga boosts self-awareness. So it allows you to, to say to yourself, my knee doesn't feel quite right. What if I moved it a little bit this way? Or, my shoulder feels a little bit funny. What if I rolled my shoulder back a little bit? Okay, does that feel better? And that really boosts our body awareness. How does my body feel? Is there a way I could make it feel better? Is there a way I could reduce that tension or, shift my body in some way so that this movement is not painful for me? It just an incredible way to boost our self-awareness. Yoga is non-judgmental. Again, a reason why there's no mirrors. Very difficult to judge what you're doing when you can't see what you're doing. And don't worry about your classmates judging you. Your classmates are not looking at you. I promise. And the reason I can promise that is because if you're looking at other people during your yoga class, you can't do the poses. I always say to people, try looking at your neighbor when you're in tree pose. You'll fall over, okay? You have to be focused on what you're doing. You have to be focused on your body and how it's moving. You can't be looking at other people. It's too distracting. Then you can't accomplish the pose you're trying to. So yoga is very non-judgmental. Yoga is very open to all people, all body shapes and sizes, all levels of practice. Yoga is a very accepting community. And yoga helps us to be more satisfied with and less critical of our bodies. It helps us to appreciate our bodies more. And when we appreciate something, we take better care of it. And lastly, yoga encourages mindfulness. So mindfulness is simply the act of being in the moment, focusing on what you're doing right now, how you feel, what's happening around you. We're paying attention to what's going on in the moment without judgment. Okay, so we're simply observing. We're not judging or ranking or categorizing. Yoga encourages this mindfulness through breath work and cueing. When you're focusing on your breath, okay, when the instructor is telling you, now you inhale, now you exhale, if you're focusing on your breath, it's very difficult to focus on anything else. The instructor will also encourage you by saying things like, bring your attention to your right foot or bring your attention to your left shoulder. Well, if you're focusing on your left shoulder, you can't be focusing on anything else. So that cueing helps to bring you back to the moment that you're in right now. It's very difficult to let your mind wander during the movement part of a yoga class. And what's great is that this mindfulness then carries over to other aspects of our lives. So when we're practicing being mindful in a yoga class, when it's easy, okay, it's easy to be mindful because the instructor is reminding you, right, every minute or every other minute to be here, to be in the moment, to focus on your left shoulder. When we practice that type of mindfulness in a yoga class, when it's easy, it makes it that much easier to practice it in our real lives when it might be difficult. The more we practice in a safe setting like a yoga studio, the better able we are to incorporate that mindfulness in the real world. All right, let's try it. So we're going to spend the next few minutes here I had to include this picture because this pose, or what's closest to this pose that you see from this cat here, is called downward dog, but of course it's a cat, so it made me laugh. So I had to include that. So we're going to spend the next couple of minutes here. I'm going to temporarily stop sharing my screen so that you can see me again, and I'm going to move my camera. So if you suffer from motion sickness, maybe look away from the screen for a moment here. That looks pretty good. I don't know that you'll be able to see my feet necessarily, but I'll do my best. Thanks. And Kitty, can you still hear me okay? Okay, good. All right. So if you'd like to participate, feel free. You can do it right where you are. If you're sitting in a chair, or if you're sitting even on your couch, that's all perfectly fine. And if you prefer not to, that's okay too. You can simply watch. You'll notice that I don't have any shoes on, okay? Yoga is generally practiced barefoot. If you have socks or shoes on, that's okay. We're going to do everything sitting, right in whatever chair you're in. I'm just in a regular office chair. You could do this in a kitchen chair, or even in an armchair, or on the couch. So we're going to start out with that centering that I mentioned. So placing your feet flat on the floor, okay? Your hands can rest in your lap, or you can rest them on your knees, whatever is comfortable for you. And I'll invite you to close your eyes or soften your gaze, and just take a moment to kind of start to arrive in this position. Just notice how your breath feels as you breathe normally. Okay, don't do anything to change the cadence or the depth of your breathing. Just breathe normally, but notice how it feels. How does it feel as you inhale through your mouth? Or I'm sorry, how does it feel as you inhale through your nose? Does the air feel cool? Does it feel warm? And then as you exhale, you can exhale through your nose or through your mouth, as you prefer. How does that feel? And as you breathe in and breathe out, begin to imagine that with every exhale, you're exhaling any tension that you might be holding in your body. Imagine inhaling relaxation and exhaling tension. Now, as you breathe, try to make your exhale just a little bit longer than your inhale. So if your inhale allows you to count maybe to 4, as you exhale, try to count to 5. Just making that exhale a tiny bit longer than the inhale. And if you can do that, then maybe try one more. So if you can inhale to 4, maybe now you can exhale to 6. take 1 or 2 more breaths. And then let your eyes flutter open. Come back to your space. We're going to start with a little bit of movement. Okay? The very first pose I'm going to show you is called mountain pose, or in Sanskrit, you would say Tadasana. And this is normally a standing pose, but again, today we're going to do everything seated. So for mountain pose, I want you to start with your feet, place your feet flat on the floor, and imagine pressing the base of your big toe, the base of your baby toe, and your heel into the floor. And pull those 3 spots together. So you're creating a little arch in your foot, almost like your foot is a tripod, okay? So really rooting down into those corners of your feet. Knees are bent, feet flat on the floor. Hips, right, are settled comfortably in your seat. Imagine your tailbone, okay? Imagine pulling your tailbone down and trying to embed it into the seat. So pull that tailbone down towards your chair seat. Roll your shoulders forward, up, back, and down. So you should feel that your shoulder blades have pulled together a little bit. Hands can be down at your sides. Rotate your arms so that your palms are facing forward. Lift your chin. And then tuck your chin just a tiny bit. That will help to lengthen out the back of your neck. This pose right here, so instead of just being simple sitting, this is a yoga pose. This is Tadasana. This is mountain pose. So we'll start here. This Tadasana is frequently the pose that you come back to during class. So in between poses or in between a series of poses, you'll frequently come to the front of your mat into Tadasana. It's kind of like the refrain or the chorus in a song. And it's what you come back to in between the verses. So now from this pose, we're going to move into some spinal warm-ups. So with your right arm down at your side, lift your left arm up into the air. Reach your right arm down towards the floor, your left arm up, and then over. Okay, so we're bending, you're bending towards the right. Then come back up and switch, left arm down, right arm up, bending to the left. Inhale, the right arm down, left arm up. Exhale, left arm down, right arm up. Good. Come back to Tadasana, okay? Seated, palms face forward. Take your right hand, place it on your right thigh, lift your left arm, and twist. So twist your belly, your ribs, your chest towards the right side. Place your left hand on your right arm and simply twist. Try to look over your right shoulder. Maybe you can't go this far. That's okay. Go just as far as you can. And then exhale, back to the center. Left hand on left thigh, right arm up. Twist the belly, ribs, chest. Bring your right hand to your left arm. Look over your left shoulder. Again, inhale, back to center. Left arm up. Twist to the right. Inhale to center. Exhale, twist to the left. Good. Come back to the center. Next, we're going to move into cat and cow. So this will help to, we're going to be curling our spine a little bit. Place your hands on your knees and root that tailbone down into your seat again. Okay. Feet firmly on the floor. We're going to lift the head, okay, lift the chin, arch the back. So pull the shoulder blades together as you push the heart forward. Okay. Feel the belly round towards the front of the room. Then exhale as you round the back, curl the shoulders in, tuck the chin. Let's do that twice more. Inhale, lift. This is cow. Exhale, curl. This is cat. Inhale, lift, pull the shoulder blades together. Exhale, curl, tuck the chin, cat. Come back to center. Okay, so that's the end of our warm-up. Now, the next couple of poses that we're going to move through here, this will be more like our body of class. And again, this is quite abbreviated. I know we're coming to the end of our time already. I don't want to take too long. So our next pose that we're going to practice is chair pose. Kind of silly, right? Because we're sitting in a chair. Again, this is normally a standing pose. You can do it sitting in a chair. So scooch a little bit further to the front of your chair. Okay. Feet flat on the floor. Again, pull the base of the big toe, base of the baby toe, and the heel together. Place your hands on your knees. Lean the upper body forward just a little bit. So lean from the hips. Okay, I don't want you to curl your shoulders like we did in cat. Instead, imagine just leaning forward from the hips. Okay, hinging forward from the hips. Chin tucked just slightly. Roll the shoulders. Forward, up, back, down. Now lift the arms. Okay? Arms lift toward the ceiling. Try to bring your arms alongside your ears if you can. Okay? Continue to lean forward. Press the feet into the floor. Reach for the ceiling. Fingertips are active. Hold this pose. Continue to breathe. Let's take one more breath here. Then bring the hands back down to the knees. Okay. You can scooch back a little bit on your chair. The last pose I'm going to show you today is boat. And boat can be a tremendously advanced pose if you're practicing yoga on the floor, on a mat. But again, it's a pose that you can do simply seated in your chair. So, scooching to the front of your chair again a little bit. Boat pose, we're going to hinge from the hips again, but we're going to hinge back. Okay, so imagine pulling that tailbone down towards your bum. Okay, shoulders leaned back, chest is open, shoulder blades are pulled together slightly. Come to the tips of your toes. Okay, so the tips of your toes are on the floor. You're leaned back, tips of the toes are on the floor, arms are extended forward, fingertips are active. You should feel a little activity in the abdominal area. Okay, so you should feel that your abdominal muscles are working to hold you up. Now, you don't have to, but you could raise one leg and then put it down. Now, if you want to try that again, you could do the other leg. You could inhale, raise the leg, exhale, lower the leg. Excellent. All right, come back to a normal sitting position. And we're going to spend just a moment here in Shavasana. Now, Shavasana is almost always referred to by its Sanskrit name because it translates in English to corpse. And nobody really likes to practice corpse pose. So it's almost always called Shavasana. Normally, if you were in a mat-based class, you would lie on the floor. with your arms spread out at your sides and your legs straight out. In a chair, we'll simply sit in a relaxed position. You can rest your hands in your lap. You can rest your hands at your sides if that's more comfortable. Okay. And again, your shoulders, your neck, your head, just in whatever position is comfortable for you. We'll sit just for a moment. Feel your body begin to relax. Feel your breath. Feel the muscles in your feet, your legs, your hips. Loosen. Feel your hips sink into the chair. Feel your shoulders slide down your back. Feel your whole body rest. Begin to notice your fingers and your toes. Begin to take some gentle movement. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. Sit up, maybe roll the shoulders again. All right. Come back to a comfortable sitting position. I'm going to put my camera back where it was so that we can finish up. There we go. All right. Share my screen again really quick.
Very nice, Jen. I did those exercises.
Thank you.
That's good.
So I just wanted to spend, I know we're a little bit over time already, but I just wanted to spend the last couple of minutes just going through a little bit of detail with you for those of you who are interested in starting yoga. Finding a location is so easy nowadays. There are wonderful yoga studios all over Western New York. Many gyms also offer yoga if you have a gym membership through your health plan. Gyms offer yoga classes. Most senior centers that I work with have at least one yoga class. So those are all great choices. If you're new to yoga, look for words like gentle yoga, beginner yoga, or all levels. So a good yoga instructor will make you comfortable no matter what level of class you are taking. If you are truly a beginner, it is good to start at a beginner level if you can. Dress comfortably. So when I was backed away from the camera a little bit more, you could see how I'm dressed today. The pants I'm wearing are called yoga pants. They tend to be tight. If that is something that is not comfortable for you, that is perfectly okay. But you do want to wear something that you can move in easily. And when it comes to shirts for both ladies and gentlemen, something that fits a little bit tighter is a good idea, because in some poses, you might be looking down at the floor. You know, you're trying to touch your toes. A lot of times a shirt will fall upwards, or the collar of the shirt will fall up around your chin or your face if your head is down towards the floor. So something that is maybe a little bit snugger fitting is usually a good idea. In these COVID days, Generally, bring your own mat and props. Many yoga studios used to have mats and other props for people to use, but I know a lot of studios stopped doing that when the whole pandemic started. So you can certainly call ahead and ask. I have some examples here on the screen. These kind of yoga mats, they're a little sticky so that you don't slip on them. These are great. The top picture is a yoga block. So I have my own right here. They're made out of foam. Sometimes they're made out of cork, but these are great, particularly if you're not very flexible or your range of motion is somewhat limited. I know several times I've mentioned bending over and trying to touch your toes. And some of you are probably thinking, no, I can't do that. What the block does is the block brings the floor up to you. So as you're bending over, if you can't reach the floor, that's okay. You put your hand on a block instead, okay? So that's what the blocks do. And then what you also see here is it's called a yoga strap. A yoga strap allows you to stretch a little bit more deeply in some positions or makes some positions more accessible for a lot of people. So these are good props to have. They're not necessary, but they are helpful. Arrive early and introduce yourself to the instructor. I can't stress this enough, especially if you have any kind of modifications that you might need. Telling the instructor ahead of time, hey, I've never taken yoga before. I'm really a beginner. I'm recovering from surgery. I had a joint replacement. All of those things are really helpful for the instructor to know so that he or she can better cue you during the class. And then at the end of the class, especially if it's your first class, don't leave without saying goodbye to the instructor. So if it's your first class and you talk to the instructor at the beginning, the instructor knows it was your first class or your first class with that instructor. If you leave without saying goodbye, the instructor's probably going to feel like something is wrong. You weren't comfortable, you didn't like it, it didn't feel good to you, and he or she will wonder if there's something that they could have done to make you more comfortable. So it's always a good idea just to say thank you and goodbye, even if you don't have any feedback or anything to add. I know a lot of yoga instructors, and I can tell you from experience, they do wonder. If you leave without saying goodbye, they wonder if they did something wrong. These are just a couple of common poses that I wanted to show you. Some of them might look scary. Know that they can all be modified to make things more accessible for you. This pose to the left of your screen, the middle picture, the lady just laying on the floor, that is Shavasana. So if you were practicing in a mat-based class, that's what it would look like. You can see it's a very relaxed pose. On top of that, the lady who's sitting back on her heels with her arms extended, that is child's pose. Again, another very common restorative pose. Again, if you think to yourself, there's no way I could sit back on my heels like that, there are ways to make it more accessible for you, including using blocks. At the bottom of the page, where we've got the lady practicing with the child, this is tree pose. Tree pose can be modified in all sorts of ways to make it more accessible, including having one hand against a wall, steadying yourself. So don't be frightened by how it looks. The pose in the middle, this is either supposed to be Warrior 1 or Warrior 2. I'm not really sure what this person is doing, but there are 3 poses that bear the name Warrior. Warrior 1, 2, and 3. And this is a pose that builds strength, balance, stability. In the upper right-hand corner, this is Downward Dog, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen over the years. This is one of those poses where your shirt is going to fall up if you don't have a tighter fitting shirt on. So one of the reasons I recommend a snugger fitting top. And then the last picture, kind of at 3 o'clock, if you're going clockwise, is plank. And plank, again, can be modified in many ways to make it more accessible for everyone. So at the end of yoga class, the instructor will join his or her hands in, this is called prayer position. Prayer position, thumbs kind of pushing into your breastbone, and the instructor will say namaste. Namaste, again, is a Sanskrit word, and it translates loosely to something like, the light in me sees and honors the light in you. And then together the class says namaste. So namaste, thank you for being with me today. And if you have any questions, I would love to know. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just see if we have anything in the chat here. Blocks are fantastic. They're so inexpensive, by the way. If you're just getting started with yoga or with acquiring yoga equipment, honestly, TJ Maxx. They have a whole section of yoga mats and blocks and straps and all kinds of stuff, and they're so inexpensive. So I always recommend that as a place for beginners to acquire yoga equipment. And the blocks are really great for helping to modify positions to make them more accessible. All right. Any other questions? I know, I'm sorry I kept you a little bit longer than we were planning on.
I can unmute anyone if they have a question. Jennifer, I was wondering, so the hot yoga, is that good for stretching so that it's not so impactful on the muscles, or?
Yeah. So the hot yoga it's tough and you sweat a lot, but it really does allow you a deeper stretch because your muscles are so warm and loose. So if you can tolerate the heat, which I cannot, but if you can, it really is great in terms of flexibility.
And is there any specific studio that does chair yoga?
I don't know of any studios that do chair yoga, but most senior centers offer yoga classes that, even if they are not specifically chair-based, you can use a chair to modify a lot of the poses. And even something like that warrior pose that I showed, that you saw on one of the pictures, you can use a chair for that. So you could, this might be hard for you to see, but you could even, in a pose like that, you can even do it, now this is too high for me, but you can do it with your thigh across the seat of a chair, so that you're not using, you're not necessarily using your own body weight or body stability to hold yourself up. So a chair can be incorporated in a lot of ways, even if it isn't, even if you're not sitting in the chair. You can use a chair for a lot of different poses to add stability.
Okay. Well, I think it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
And I know that later in the summer, I'm teaching another class on fitness trackers. So if that's something, if you got a Fitbit or something for Mother's Day and you don't know what it does,
Right.
I'm going to be teaching a class on that a little bit later in the summer.
Awesome. And for everyone on, this will be available again on our website at seniorservices.com or .gov/University Express, as well as YouTube.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, Jennifer.
Take care.